Welcome to the ClearlyWell Podcast. I'm Elizabeth McKeon, a board-certified psychiatric mental health and addiction recovery nurse. This podcast aims to bridge the gap between mental health and substance use discussions, fostering understanding and empathy while reducing stigma. Join us as we amplify the voices of those with lived experiences, creating a non-judgmental space for their stories to be heard. Thank you for tuning in. Hey guys, this is Elizabeth McKeon with the ClearlyWell Podcast. Welcome to 2025. I'm so excited to say that we are starting season 2 of the ClearlyWell Podcast. But as we start out this new year, I did want to sort of do a recap of the 2024 ClearlyWell Podcast. It was definitely just a vision, something that I've always wanted to do, to talk about folks with substance use disorder and bringing mental health into their space and how that's often unaddressed, and wanted to talk about a more holistic approach to treatment. We had many guests on the podcast. Their stories became so impactful. Every single person that came on the podcast was able to identify a time in their life that mental health was unaddressed, which totally proved the fact that mental health should always be addressed with substance use disorder. Over the past year, we've explored a wide range of impactful topics. We've highlighted emerging treatments. We've talked about things like gas station drugs, Narcan, all the things that both experts and individuals with lived experience agree on. We've had a few expert panels. We've definitely had peer-led stories that were inspiring. Those interviews with individuals who turned their struggles with substance use disorder into powerful recovery journeys offered us hope and gave us practical insights. We have also talked about some emerging trends, and one of the things I want to talk about today in this inaugural episode of Season 2 is a Did You Know? Did you know that GLP-1 receptor agonists are being used in trial with substance use disorder? What is a GLP receptor agonist? You see these in commercials for weight loss. They are brands like Wegovy, Ozempic, Mounjaro. What we are seeing in the medical community is this is an emerging potential breakthrough in managing substance use disorder and cravings. This is how it works. GLP-1 receptor agonists, like semaglutide, regulate dopamine activity in the brain. This helps reduce cravings and compulsive disorders, often associated with substance use disorder. In clinical studies, research has shown that GLP-1 therapies significantly reduce alcohol and opioid consumption in preclinical models. Human trials are now underway to explore their effectiveness. We here at the ClearlyWell Podcast can't wait to see if there's groundbreaking information that's going to come out in our treatment for MAT. Stay tuned for future episodes in 2025 where we will update this latest recovery in science and compassionate care solutions. So I'm excited to say that in episode 1 of the ClearlyWell Podcast Season 2, we are going to do the Pod Swap episode 71 from Talking Trash with Tim Snyder and Mike Oxley. You can hear the Talking Trash podcast anywhere you get your podcasts, from YouTube to iHeartRadio, you name it, they're out there. These guys are transformational in what they're doing in the addiction world. Tim Snyder is a person in long-term recovery himself, and Mike Oxley is an LPN. Mike Oxley was actually Tim's nurse in treatment, and they have a phenomenal podcast. You should listen to it. They have great music. They have humor. They do what's called a clean time, where they are giving people credit for their time in recovery, whether that's one day to, 15 years. Everybody gets the same amount of credit for what their clean time is. They just do a fantastic job. I'm so proud of them. And I was just blessed to be a guest on their podcast, and we did what's called a pod swap. So I came on their podcast. I'm going to launch that episode on mine as the very first episode for season 2. And then the second episode is going to actually be Tim Snyder, where he will tell his impactful story and his journey to recovery. That guy has really been through it. I can't wait for you guys to hear his story. And guys, just stay tuned. I'm so excited for this season and can't wait for you to listen. Take care. So as I wrap up today's introductory podcast, I want to state that please do not substitute this podcast for professional therapy or treatment. The content shared here is for informational and entertainment purposes only. We do ask our listeners to respect the diverse experiences of individuals and refrain from passing judgment. If you or someone you know needs professional help, please seek the guidance of a registered and qualified mental health professional. ClearlyWell is brought to you by Healthy Georgia and produced by CNC Media. If you or someone you know wants to be on the podcast, please email us at clearlywellpodcast@gmail.com. Again, that's clearlywellpodcast@gmail.com. Also, please follow us and share on social media. We're on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok.